And it sounds so mundane and prosaic, but it truly is. I mean, when you can hit that moment, that chopping wood, carrying water moment, it is all there.
It's all present, yes.
That is an exciting realization. How do you see the world? How old are you today?
58.
58. How do you see 58 and you're coming up to your 60s and coming? How does that look from the perspective of life that you're seeing it now, Anne?
In terms of what do I think will happen in the future?
Yeah, just as far as what is this next decade do you see where you're going?
I don't necessarily see where I'm going. It takes almost all my consciousness to be where I am. And so to see where I'm going takes me so far away from that, when everything that I'm about is to stay where I am, that I don't have that. But I will tell you that, I think I mentioned before, I don't really have goals, but sometimes I do have goals. They have me. I will wake up with an idea that is something to do, is a doable plan for my life. But it's not something that I've thought. I didn't make a list of 100 things that I like to do and try to figure out how to do those throughout the day. What happened is that something presented itself, and I think that could really work. I think I'm going to work on manifesting that by picturing it.
Is that your process first? Do you picture and then identify? I mean, do you work through a treatment process in that sense, or what's your creative process?
My creative process changes. But if I get an idea that I think is really good, then I'll go on and use some of my stray thoughts to think of it already being that way. I don't use a formalized treatment process. But if I were to look, I could probably codify most anything that I do, but I don't do it from a sense of structure initially. I think once you've worked with manifestation for 30 or 40 years, then you pretty much. I do have one of the great manifestations I had. This is back in the old days. I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, but my ways changed. You know what I mean? Way back in there when I was really young. But I had this idea that I really wanted to speak in front of a large crowd. And I said, well, I wonder if I really play this thing in my mind and feel it 100%, just doing it the old-fashioned visualization way. So I did. I went inside and I felt what it would like to have 5 people helping me on stage, what it would be like to stand in front of lots of lights and have great sound and the pictures behind me and all of these kinds of things. And I just pictured it very, very strongly for about 5 minutes. And I think I pictured it later that day. And the next day I got a call from someone, and he said, I've read your book and I really like it. And he said, I like it so much that I'm having 1,000 people in the Vancouver Convention Center, and I wondered if you would come and speak to us about it. And he said, I know it's Thanksgiving holidays and it might be difficult. And I said, just let me know, call me back, I will get there, some way I will get there. Well, I was able to create getting there, and sure enough, within just really a matter of a few weeks, I was standing in front of that crowd of 1,000 people. And with the lights and 5 people hooking me up and the sounds and everything. And so it was just a really extraordinarily quick manifestation.
Yeah. Because time is that's not what we're functioning under.
Yeah, time is not what we're functioning and so I go back and forth about whether to consciously create or not. Mm-hmm. I more or less consciously create when I'm in my ego, and my ego is trying to tell me that things are not working out or that life is not okay. And rather than let my ego run around like a mad dog, it's like, I'm going to create something here. And I might as well at least constructively use my mind, as opposed to letting my mind go off rabid. So I'll create a whatever, a miraculous day, a chance encounter, whatever it is that I want to create. I will create that to keep my mind, because that quietens my mind. My mind isn't going to go off. It's like saying, okay, well, this I can take. but this nothingness, for some reason, I can't take it. But then, like I'm saying, that for the most part, my goal is to keep my mind quiet and still. And that's been the same thing. When my husband met me, he said, what do you want most in your life? That was 10 years ago, and I said, a still mind. And I went to the home of that teaching, which is in Tiruvannamalai, India, and got to sit in a spiritual master's, the cave that he meditated in for 17 years, and it's really the heart of that teaching. It originated from that place in India, and you can feel it in the earth. It's there. It's wonderful. And I just sat and I said, I'll just sit with a still mind in that space, in that town. It's a really tiny little village in the south of India with hills. It's a beautiful place.
That must have been extraordinary.
It was.
And then to know that it isn't that place.
Well, it isn't that place, but I'll tell you a strange story about this place. I've always had this connection with Shiva, and I've always had some fear of snakes. And Shiva wears snakes, and snakes, in the Indian culture represent Kundalini and power. Yep. And so I've had a lot of snake synchronicity, a lot of dreams, a lot of powerful things with snakes. And the first time I went to India, I saw snakes. I mean, when I was there, just all this profound stuff. Shiva, 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 Shiva. And I haven't concentrated on it too much, but I've always known there was a Shiva connection. I went over to India, and the place in Tiruvannamalai is at this hill called Arunachala. And in Arunachala, it's supposed to be such a sacred mountain. I didn't know the whole story about it, but in Arunachala, which is where I was in the cave and I was meditating, I took home a DVD, and when I took the DVD, in the DVD it said that Arunachala is an embodiment of Shiva, and it says, Shiva will call his disciples home. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been drawn to southern India, to this, and it was just a fluke that I was able to go there even on this trip. And so there I was in what's the earthly presentation of Shiva, meditating with that energy. And when I just felt chills when I saw that DVD, and it says, Shiva will call his disciples home.